I think that's what it comes down to, like understanding that when people do say these things to you, and they will, the louder you are about your vision, the more clearly that you're communicating what it is that you want to see and create in the world, people will try to shrink you back down to size to say, okay, wait, like, is this allowed? Like, and the reason is, one, like we just said, they're just living out their programming. They're trying to give you your best shot at success. But two, this forces them to come up against a part of themselves where they say, oh, I've been a cog in the system. I've been in the program. I've been living this half life, and that can be wildly triggering for people.
Yes.
So then projection happens.
Yes. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, or how to get people on board with your mission is probably the best, like, most straightforward way of saying that. And I'm talking about the first step of that is being able to actually communicate and articulate your vision.
Right.
Because I know that, like, a lot of time the vision comes from, I don't know, but not this.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, it's a vision in contrast. Whereas,
I don't know, but not this. So true.
And so when you start from there, which I think generationally, I think I can say pretty confidently that we have a lot of that going on. Like, just disenfranchised with what was and all the things that were already set up.
You mean millennials?
Yeah. But even some people that aren't millennials, they're still, like, I don't know, just generationally, I feel like there is a lot of breaking down of structures, like societal structures, ideas. Like, yes, I can have purple hair and be a 6-figure earner. Yes, I can have a face tattoo and, like, or run my own business or work a high-end job or whatever. Like, that's what I mean. Like, we're kind of just tearing down a ton of stuff, but what's not happening as well is that we're not able to really articulate what we want instead. And, like, even in like the quintessential, where do you want to eat? I don't know, where do you want to eat?
Yeah.
Not that. Not that. Not there.
I literally say that to my fiance. I'm like, oh, you pick. And then he's like, well, I want pizza. And I'm like, no, I don't want pizza. But you could pick. Okay, yes.
So exactly, like, we're really good at saying what we don't want to be happening, but we're not really good at articulating what it is that we do want. And I think that part of that comes from clarity.
Yes.
You have to know what you want.
Yes.
But then after that, there's still the challenge of, like, getting people to see it your way, in a not in a manipulative way, but just helping people understand your advantage and understand what it is that you're trying to create.
Well, at first, what I think is, like, there's some people that just have the urge for something more, but they're just really not sure what that is. Like, they feel like, and this is what I call, like, the higher self calling. Like, they feel to be a higher version of themselves, to operate in a higher version of themselves, but they're like, I don't know what I want. So then it turns into a lot of frustration or a lot of guilt or a lot of, like, just erratic behavior, like just trying a lot of things.
Yeah, like impulsive, like just this isn't working. Let me just, like, kind of flip tables and figure something out on the way.
Yeah.
So, like, with that, I definitely think that it does come from, like, they do feel the call. They do feel like visionaries. I think even if before they've self-identified as visionaries, they do feel a disenfranchisement. Like, that's really the best word that I can pick for it. Like, this isn't working the way that it's supposed to be working.
Yes.
This doesn't fit me. I'm too different for this. And, like, we're kind of, taught to minimize that part of ourselves and just kind of be a cog in the system.
Yes.
And we're completely, like, over that. But there needs to be an intentional time, I think, where they sit down and say, okay, so what is it that is going to make me happy, or what is it that I want to be seeing that I'm not seeing? And so, like, one of the main things that, like, comes up when I think about this, or I've thought about this a whole lot, is that there's, like, an allowing, like, what's possible, right? So what I mean by that is, like, if you know, okay, not this isn't right, but you don't think that what you want is possible, you might not even let your mind go there.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, what I was, like, this is a really good, I'll just say what happened to me, because I think that the way that you're describing it, there's, like, elements that definitely happened to me. I went from college, and then my part-time job turned into my 9-to-5, and I quickly realized, like, I hated it.
Nope.
And it was just, I had a lot of friction with all of the people that I was with, because I kept thinking, like, this can't be what's it. Like, this can't be everything. And I would say those things to people, and I would always get pushback. And it's not until, like, now when I understood, I just have, like, a visionary mind. I'm somebody who loves the big picture. I love somebody who, like, somebody who can see a different way. And I'm not really scared of, like, exploring that. And so, if this is definitely, if you're stuck in a 9-to-5, you probably feel this a little bit like I did. But I always got pushback, especially when I said it with other people, and they would be like, that's not the way the world works.
Yeah.
And, like, I could feel it all, like, radiate out of my body. I was like, no.
Right.
You mean I'm just supposed to pay bills and, like, live in an apartment that I hate, and, like, that I couldn't even furnish, that I couldn't even, like, afford. Like, I didn't have internet, and I could barely, like, pay for food, and you're telling me this is it? Like, no.
Right, just, like, this big, like, from a soul, like, depth, like, no, I don't think you're right here.
Yes, and I was just kind of put off by the situation that I was in the 9-to-5, because it's like, you have to kind of, like, play the game.
Yeah.
You have to play the game of, like, okay, like, I'm listening and I'm doing what you're saying, and, like, where's my raise? Where's my blah, blah, blah? And, you know, you have to wait and be told, like, okay, now it is given to you, type of thing.
It's very disempowering.
Yes.
Because you have to play, like you said, on someone else's board.
Yes.
But I want to go back to where people are saying this is it, and you're like, no. I want to acknowledge this space, because the person who told you that this is it, that this is as good as it gets, that is from their level of belief in what's possible in the world. Like, it's not an attack. It's not a sit down, kid. It's very much like, this is what they believe is possible. This is what they believe is true about the world. They're trying to, like, disseminate wisdom. Yeah. And kind of ground you a little bit, because this is the programming just running rampant for that person. Yeah. Right? And so as a visionary, you're going to come up against a lot of people who are, with their best interest, it's just, like, completely intentionally good, trying to sit you back down and say, wait, hang on a second, this is going to be an intense fall when you fall from up here. Yes. Let's maybe knock you down a few pegs now, so that you're not, you know, coming crashing and burning. And parents do this a lot too. Yes. Parents, they don't, it's all good intentions, but they don't want to see you get this giant idea and then fail at it, because they're protecting, they're trying to protect your feelings. And so inadvertently they'll tell you, oh, that's not possible, oh, you don't want that. Yes. Right? Like, oh, that's that hit me. Right? Like, they'll say that, but it comes from a place of trying to protect you, like, I think completely earnestly. And you kind of have to know this, I think, as a visionary, especially as you're learning to own that side of yourself. Yeah. Because otherwise you'll believe them. One, that'll become your internal voice, which is basically ego, right? Your ego will have, like, fuel to run and say, no, go ahead and stay small, go ahead and keep being here. Yeah. But, like, understanding that they're coming at you with love is really going to change that whole dynamic, because then you're not feeling like, oh, they're just haters. Right? That's
literally my entire life. Like, that's, I always, like, make fun of myself and be like, oh, like, I'm some big edgelord, you know, like, oh, look at me, like, I'm different. And but it was like, a lot of that is a shield, because for so long I was told that no, like, that's not the way the world works, or you don't like that, or, you know, just, I mean, I understand now, like, on the other side of it, that was just, like, the program that everybody runs on, and they're just trying to show you so you can be successful and run in the program too. But if you have a visionary streak in you, it's for me, it turned into like a spiral of anger and frustration.
It totally can, yeah.
I was passionate, but then that passion turned into like, nobody likes me, I have tattoos, and I have piercings, and I'm so different. And it became like this weird shield, right? But for other people, it can really become like just like they internalize it more than me. Like I kind of externalized it and made it a shield. Some people will internalize it and then like stonewall like their little heart, and they're like, okay, I'm just going to like live in here, and maybe I'll come out and to say them some things, but I'm just gonna live in here for a little bit, and it's just gonna be okay because I can operate and be fine in the world, but I know that like I'm a really good person and I know what I'm doing, and maybe I can't. Maybe I don't want those things really. Yeah. You know?
Yeah. You shrink.
Yes.
You shrink your energy. You kind of reel it back in. And there's a couple of ways that you can go with it, like you just said. So one, it's kind of like a me against the world feel. Yes. And you wear that kind of proudly and say, okay, yeah, like I'm here. Nobody likes me. I'm doing what I want anyway. Yes. You know, whatever. But then the other kind of side of that spectrum is, oh, maybe they're right. Maybe I'll just kind of do a mini version of this, or, you know, whatever that looks like for you. But
a safe version of what I wanted.
Yeah. Like instead of starting an international school for spiritual awakening, you do like a workshop once a year in your small town. Yeah. Right? Like that's kind of what I mean. You kind of shrink it to where you don't feel too big for your britches kind of thing. And I think that's what it comes down to, like understanding that when people do say these things to you, and they will, the louder you are about your vision, the more clearly that you're communicating what it is that you want to see and create in the world, people will try to shrink you back down to size to say, okay, wait, like, is this allowed? Like, and the reason is, one, like we just said, they're just living out their programming. They're trying to give you your best shot at success. But two, this forces them to come up against a part of themselves where they say, oh, I've been a cog in the system. I've been in the program. I've been living this half life, and that can be wildly triggering for people. Yes. So then projection happens.
Yes, that's so true. I was about to say, like, change like that, like real authentic, like being so happy and being able to act from that place of alignment and saying like, this is what I want to do, and it's different and it's cool and this is who I am and I'm not afraid to do it. That is super scary to other people, and especially sometimes those people can be related to you. Yeah.
And if they've convinced themselves that their life that they're living is the best they can do, and then you go here and basically shit on that and say, no, like, I think you could be doing, you know, I'm doing this 100 times bigger than whatever it is that is happening right now. Like, their whole ego is going to come and, like, terrorize them, essentially.
Yes. Because your existence is literally, like, making them question things about their own decisions and their own lives. Absolutely. So it can definitely trigger people. Yeah. I mean, I've had people say things to me that they've come back and been like, wow, I'm so sorry. So it's just part of, like, owning your visionary self.
Absolutely. And that's, like, part of the journey is, like, first you have to clarify your vision. True. You have to know what it is that you want, right? And like I said earlier, like, we're used to saying, not this, I don't want this, right? And from a manifesting standpoint, we probably shouldn't be doing that anyway. We should be focusing more on what we want. But it can be kind of difficult for people to articulate what it is that they want because there's no examples. As a visionary, you are blazing your own trail. Yes. Yeah. The whole way. Yes. Yeah. And there's not really anyone to follow. And I had to deal with this so intensely in my business. When I first came out as, like, a spiritual business coach, I didn't see anybody else. There may have been people, but I had no examples to follow. I was just like, okay, here, I'm going to talk about content marketing, and I'm going to talk about this with the context of spirituality. And that's really different. And that's not a thing that I've seen. And so I didn't have anyone to structure myself around. I didn't have any sort of, like, mentor that I could, like, talk this kind of language with. And so with me, there was a ton of trial and error. But I knew what I wanted. And even now, I'm still getting closer and closer to having my message be what I want it to be, right? But the reason I bring this up is because, like, when you blaze your own trail, there is a sense of loneliness at the beginning where you have to kind of strike out on your own and say, okay, here's what I'm about. I'm going to let this be messy.
Yes.
I'm going to learn on the way. And I'm going to have a lot of grace with myself. This is really important. I'm going to have a lot of grace with myself as I learn how to really own that visionary part of myself.
Yep.
Otherwise, you can guilt yourself forever, especially because it's going to bring up stuff like with your family or with your spouse or whoever it is that you're trying to communicate your vision to.
Especially if you're not out of the spiritual closet.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah, especially that. So like you're over here like, okay, so I think I just want to do Reiki for a living. Is that like allowed? And your people, especially if they're muggles, they're going to say, absolutely not. You cannot just make a living out of doing Reiki or talking to people, right? Yeah. Which is essentially coaching, right? You're just talking and holding space, right? So when you're coming up against people who just, frankly, in the best way possible with no ill meant, it's like they don't get it. They don't get it. There's going to be those challenges, and having compassion for yourself in those moments, and also compassion for them because, like we talked earlier, they're just living out their programming. It's not you.
Yes.
That's going to really help you maintain your relationships as a visionary when stuff gets tough. Like, learning to have compassion for yourself and them. Yeah,
and you really gotta get comfortable with your root. Like get really comfortable with like who you are and being committed to like that growth process because you're gonna start out and being like, I think I want this, and then you're gonna get some feedback on it and you're gonna be like, that was close, but now I know how to tweak it a little bit. Right. So then you're gonna come at it again. And you're going to get some feedback. And you're like, I don't... Maybe? Yeah. And that's the whole process of, like, for me, what it's been like building a business.
Absolutely.
It's been like, okay, I'm just going to rework it this way. I'm going to reword my branding this way. Right. I'm going to blah, blah, blah this way. Until you get to a point where you're like, oh, here I am. Yeah. Like, this is me. And even when people tell me, like, oh, you really do that? I'm like, yeah. Like, this is what I do.
Because you own it now, right? And, like, that process of ownership wouldn't have come if you didn't test the waters. Because from a marketing, like, lingo standpoint, what you were doing is called testing. Yeah. Basically, you're testing out different angles, different copy, different, styles of content, et cetera, until you found something that really resonated. Yeah. Right? And from, my opinion, that's really how you do it for your whole business forever. Because even as you grow, you're going to be going into new territory and trying again. But back to like being comfortable with your root and being comfortable with yourself, I think that you hit on a good point there because like you need to feel safe. Like that's like the one thing that will, I think, break a visionary is if they do not feel safe casting vision, if they don't have a place or a person or somebody that they can kind of work this through, or depending on their own internal mindset and all that stuff, it could just be them, but like if they don't feel safe, then it is so hard to move forward with that vision, like almost impossible.
Like, to give like an example of the way I was when that person back in my 9-to-5 told me, when I was like complaining or whatever I was doing about whatever situation that was happening, he was like, this is just the way the world works. And I knew, like, from my root and from my core and from whoever I was, I knew no. Like, I just knew that wasn't a thing. But I also knew that, like, I didn't have anything to back that up with, kind of. Like, I didn't feel... Like, I kind of felt like he was right. Like, maybe this is.
Yeah, because you had no examples. Because you're blazing your own trail.
Yes. And then now I'm at to a part, like, of my life where if I came in contact with that person again, he would probably shut me down again just because the person that I know he is. And it wouldn't be as effective now. Because I'd be like, okay.
Sure. I've seen it be possible. I've seen the world work different ways. So have fun with that belief.
And that's the difference between like doing the work and getting clear on your vision and being so comfortable with who you are and what your mission is and what your vision is. That's the difference between like just feeling it and just like knowing it and owning it.
Yeah. There is a big difference between the two because like when you have ownership of your vision, it's not a matter of you can't be talked down from there.
Yeah.
Like at that point it is like part of your identity.
Yeah.
Part of your mission, your soul's purpose, like we talk about a little bit. Like at that point it is so deeply you that if someone were to come down and try to basically negate you and say, nope, you're not valid, like, you're gonna laugh. Because it's like, of course this is valid. Like, this is who I am.
Yes. Okay.
Like, they don't have as much to work with leverage-wise, but if you're still in the place of, like, feeling into your vision, you kind of want to, I don't want to say protect yourself, but be aware of what you're allowing to come in, like your input. So like you can share your vision with whoever, right?
Yeah.
But like give weight only to the people who you actually trust, that are maybe like a mentor or something like that, because just because you're telling someone your vision doesn't mean that they're going to have like good advice for you or you know any sort of like meaningful, helpful content to give back to you. They're just going to live out their programming and project back to you.
Yeah.
So what I mean to say here is like understanding that if you do tell someone your vision and they come back with that, like don't give that a lot of weight.
Yeah.
Don't give it a lot of weight. People are on their own path. They're on their own journey. It's not about you. It's not even about your mission or your vision. It's that they're having to face parts of themselves that they're uncomfortable with. Right there.
And don't be scared, like, to put yourself out there and say what, you know, and explore what you really want to be doing, because if you're in the beginning stages of, like, understanding that you're a visionary person and you still don't have, like, a community, or if you don't have like anything to or anybody to really talk to about it, or you don't have a mentor or anything yet, it's like don't be afraid to say it, right? Because you never know who out there is going to be on the same page as you.
Yeah.
Because once you find resonance with people, then you're going to have more and more evidence. Yeah. But it does take the leap of like being a little bit courageous with yourself and saying, this is who I am. This is what I do. I mean, for the longest time, I didn't tell people that I practice tarot.
Yeah.
Nope. And now I do like readings on my wall once a week. Yeah. And I do like live readings in my Facebook group. So it's like you can it's so possible to go from like a scared kid who went to Catholic school for 12 years and never talks about religion to talk about spirituality very openly, to coach people who are spiritual and empathic, and to openly talk about, I guess if you want to call it alternative spirituality, which would be tarot. So it's so possible to grow into what you want to be doing. It just takes a little bit of courage every day. Yeah. And it doesn't have to be like, I'm pushing myself every day to do these things, and that's going to burn you out. But like if you are just open and gentle with yourself and saying like, you know what, today I'm going to say this to somebody, or this day, or I'm going to post this on Instagram today. It's
like courage around vulnerability and like opening up.
Yes.
Like that's the kind of courage we're talking about. It's like a softening rather than like a toughening up and like charging ahead. It's like giving yourself permission to be exploratory and playful with whatever's coming through for you, and say, oh, okay, let me play around with this a little bit. Let me see how this feels. Let me kind of put it out there, because what happens is, if for visionaries, and I think this is a big thing that a lot of us deal with, it's like we will build up a planet in our mind. Like it is just, we have a whole thing, like a fully operational business happening in our brain. Right?
Wow,
like,
triggered.
Yeah, like it's like, oh, this is how this works, and this is how this works, and I'm putting out content this day, and this is how all this is happening. But like until you make the next step in the whole process of actually like communicating that to other people, I mean, it's just in your head.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, and that's hard to hear, but is such an important like step that I'm gonna go ahead and say it anyway. Like you have to be willing to communicate this out. You have to be willing to get shut down. You have to be willing to have people laugh in your face, or like I just talked to someone who like told someone their rates and they cussed them out. Like, like it was just like people are triggered by you saying, okay, here's what I want to do with my life. And so there has to be this kind of this level of, okay, I can expect that these things are going to happen. However,
there's a comfortableness in like who you are. Yeah.
It's not going to matter like that much. Like whatever feedback you're going to get, like take it with a grain of salt. But in addition to that, and I kind of want to transition to the next point that I have, is like communicating your vision is such an important step, especially if it's mission driven, if it's like collective driven, rather than like you have a vision for your own life and it doesn't really affect anybody else. Right? So for example, we work with a lot of like light workers, and we're talking to you guys who are concerned with the globe at like a collective level, collective consciousness. And if you are unable to communicate your vision for what it is of the world that you want to see, then you're going to have a hard time shifting it. Right? And so that goes back to the exploring and the playing. Like we have to figure out what kinds of verbiage, what kinds of messages are really going to connect with your people, so that you're actually able to activate, catalyze, move, shift, whatever word you want to use, your audience, right? Or your, I don't know. Yeah, let's just call them an audience for this. But like if you are stuck in a place where you have your vision, it's clear to you and you get it in your head, but you don't have people who are kind of surrounding you and moving things forward with you, then you may want to try taking different approaches at communicating the same message and seeing what resonates the most with people. Also, don't be afraid to ask people questions and say, okay, here's what I'm trying to create. I'm using this copy. Does this make sense? Am I communicating this clearly? Is there another way that you would say this? Allow yourself to really be open that way, because then you're going to get feedback from people who actually want to help you, right? Like if they're giving you that feedback, they probably want to help you. And you're able to try a new method that maybe you wouldn't have thought of before. And then this actually allows you to take your impact out further and further, right? But if you just kind of sing the same song over and over and nobody's resonating with it and nobody's connecting with it, then you're not really going to make the impact you want to make. So you have to not only be flexible about like how, like trying to clarify your vision, but you also have to be flexible about how you're communicating that and rallying people behind your cause, whatever that may be. Because you may think that the way you're saying it is like really, really clear, but you're in your head and you've like built this vision in your head. You have played with it in your head forever. And so of course it's clear to you because you have all of this other context that people don't have. Right? And so it's really good to just kind of fly it by somebody and say, hey, here's what I've got. Does this communicate this, like what I'm trying to say clearly, or no?
That's literally happened to me before. Like I've had to take things that I've created and then bring them to people that I know it would serve and say, hey, is this something that you would be interested in, or do you think this is something it'd be actually helpful for you? And they said it back to me in such a way that I was like floored. Like I was like, holy crap, like I didn't know this whole other aspect to it. So basically doing your research and actually talking to the audience that you want to serve is way better than anything that you think that you can create and channel. Absolutely. I mean, it's like you can get the messages for them and the messages that they need to hear, but it needs to be sometimes packaged in a way that they can receive it. Right.
It's an awareness thing. Like if you are very, very aware at that point of your mission and your vision, right? You're in it every day. It's on your mind every day. And so something that comes through like as a channeling point or just an insight that seems to make perfect sense isn't going to really, I mean, it may not connect all the way for someone who's just coming into your vortex and has not heard anything else from you and has not like listened to any of your content or read any of your content. Like if it needs to make sense to them too, right? And so like this is kind of where you get more into the content creation and making sure that you're communicating thoroughly in your content. But I don't want to go into that now. I just want to say, understand that people need to understand your vision in order to move with it.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah.
They can't move with it. It's like they're trying to like learn a dance with their blindfolded.
Yeah. Yeah.
They can't go with it without that clarification. And for me, just in a practical sense, right? Maybe this is the secret sauce. I don't know. In a practical sense, you can straight up message people and say, here's my landing page for XYZ program. It's to help this kind of person. This is the result that I want them to have at the end. Can you just take a look at this and see if it makes sense? Does this compel you? You know, get the kind of openness with your questions. I think a lot of people are scared to ask questions like that because it seems vulnerable. It seems like you don't know what you're doing. And honestly, if I get questions like that all the time in my inbox, obviously, because like I work in marketing, but I think it's so brave to say, okay, look, I made this. I worked really, really hard on it. Can you check it out and see like if this is actually communicating what I want to communicate? Yeah. So that would be like my most like practical tip on this is just straight up get in people's messenger. And it's better if it's someone that you've identified as like a soulmate client or your mentor who really intimately understands your business. Like those people, their advice is going to really be more impactful than just a random stranger. Yes. But even if it's a random stranger, it's still like you got to get one other person to ask about this, because otherwise you're going to build it up in your head and it's going to not, like, it's not going to land the way you think it's going to land.
Right. And we want you out here, like, actually completing this vision and raising vibrations and, like,
and making the impact.
Yes, and making the impact. And so, well, I think the question I get most in regards to having a vision, acting on your vision, owning your vision is, like, how do you know what your vision is? Like, how do I know what I want to do? Which seems like very strange for me. That was a strange question to get, because obviously the answer is like, you know the answer. Like, I don't know the answer to what you know.
Right, it's so individual.
It's so individual, but the best guidance I can give with that is that you need to at least start for me. I looked at my resolutions every year and I was like, what do I, because that's like a really good like programming thing that everybody does, right? They're like, oh, I want to do something new, and everybody's going to pick things that are like similar and slightly different. And so if you are picking the same things every year, kind of like go back and explore why you're picking those things. There could be like an underlying reason. For me, it was always like, I want to travel a lot, right? And so that was a lot for me to uncover about myself. But don't be afraid to look at your resolutions that you do every year at New Year's, but also start to, what's the word I'm looking for? Okay. When it came to like me understanding that I was a visionary, all right, I had to really start to let go of the process of people telling me what I was doing was wrong, and just starting to like understand like, oh, I'm different and it's okay and it's not weird. It's not bad.
You're safe.
I'm safe. Right? And so after I got to that place, I started to look at the type of people that were drawn to me. Right? And I started to look at the type of people that were always messaging me and were always somehow finding their ways into my life. And I kind of tried to find the string that connected the one that connected all of them. And I was like, what does it kind of like make a composite person? Like, what type of person is looking to me for guidance? And once I was able to kind of like let go of all of those protections and those shields I put up around myself, then I could really start to evaluate like, okay, I know I believe that there's more, obviously. I'm willing to commit myself and be here to help people do more and be more and see more, which is my thing that I tell myself all the time: be more, see more, do more. And I want to inspire people to do that. And so I had to kind of look and see what kind of people were being attracted to just my natural energy. of myself. And that's how I was able to look back and figure out my own, like, vision of who I was and why I was here and what I was doing and what is my soul contract and why do I exist and look at the things. So let's say, what's the secret sauce for this episode?
You know, I think committing your vision to paper and what is it that I said earlier?
Well, this episode is really about owning yourself as a visionary, learning how to explore your vision, and learning how to market your vision.
Yeah.
So I think the secret sauce here, if you're a visionary, is really get comfortable with your own route, for sure.
Can you elaborate on that?
So what I mean is, like, just be comfortable with who you are and don't be afraid to test and explore things that you like. I mean, I know that I love travel, but I knew once I started exploring it, I realized it wasn't a part of, like, core who I was. Right? So it took a little bit of, like, me exploring that to understand that, like, okay.
Follow the thread.
Yeah.
Like, all the way down and
like,
see.
I'm following my passions. Like, I knew, that brought me joy to do these things, so I started doing it more often and making more room for it. But then I realized that it wasn't a part of, like, the core message of, like, me.
Like, what you're here to say on Earth.
Yes.
Yeah, I get that. I think, like, the main thing that, like, I want to leave people with is be solid about your desire to make the impact you want to make. Like, that is your inflexible point there. But everything else, allow yourself to explore it.
Yeah.
Allow yourself to say, oh, maybe it'll look like this. Maybe I'll have these colors. Maybe I'll use this kind of language. Maybe I'll, all of that stuff. Because kind of like what you just said, where you followed your passions and whatever made you feel good in that moment, it is ultimately going to lead you to the most divine expression.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So this is part of the journey. There's a lot of people who I think are waiting to start. Because they don't have that divine expression level yet. They don't have that, like, 100% certainty in how they're showing up and where they're going to be and how they're going to market. And they're waiting for that level of certainty in that. And what happens is, in real life, is that you figure that out as you go. You figure that out by trying different things. And so if you wait for that certainty to set in with your methods rather than, like, just figuring it out on the way, then you get stuck on the wrong stuff. You get stuck in the wrong places, and it doesn't help you. So
when we were talking about this, I imagined, like, a cave. Like, have you ever seen a cenote before? It's like it's like an underwater cave. Like, they're in the Yucatan in Mexico. So anyway, what I imagined when you were talking is like a cave, like, of water, and there's, like, a rock in the middle, right? So sometimes you're not at the rock. You have to, like, wade out until you can find the rock, but once you're there, it's fine, and the water is all around you, and nothing matters, right? So don't be afraid to wade out there, try new things, make room for what you're passionate about.
And follow them.
And follow it, because when you follow it, that's really just your intuition. It's just your intuition showing you the way. And have you ever been in a situation where you did something that your intuition was like, yay, this brings me happiness, and you hated it? Like, no, it was never a bad thing. So don't be afraid to follow your intuition to create your vision that way, because you may not know at first if that's right for you, but you'll always get feedback, and you'll always pivot and learn and align more and more and more until you're at that rock.
Yeah, that's one thing you can count on the universe for.
Yes.
It's feedback.
Feedback.
You will always get feedback. You put something out and you get something in, and, like, you can count on that. So, like, that's good. But definitely, like, be solid about the impact. Be solid about who you are. Be solid about, what it is that you ultimately see happening. But let yourself get there however you get there. It's kind of like those mazes, like, for kids when they're learning how to do them. Yeah. It's like, the end point, where you start, but, like, you gotta try a couple of paths and say, oh, okay, whatever. There are some people who are just staring at this maze and saying,
paralyzed.
I can't go until I visually, like in my head, without a pen and paper, like just figure this out without actually trying. And that's like that's a surefire way to never launch.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You just won't ever launch.
No. So get that feedback.
Yeah. Right.
Get that feedback. Get that rock. That's the secret sauce.
Secret sauce. I love it.
Awesome. Okay, guys. Thank you so much for listening to episode 1 of Sold Out Strategy. If you think this episode is awesome and you got a lot from it, please share it out to your other visionary friends, other empathic friends, other spiritual business owner friends who may benefit from it as well.
Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah. Definitely follow us on Instagram. Check out our website for the show notes.
Yes, that's soldoutstrategy.com.
Yes.
That's sold with a ED at the end. SOULED.
ED?
Strategy.com. Yeah. And we'll be uploading these show notes with it, right?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So we'll be good.
Anyway, so I hope you guys have a great weekend. We'll see you in the next episode.
Yeah. Bye.
Thank you guys so much for checking out Sold Out Strategy. We'll be back next week to talk about more strategies and more things that you need to know to build your business so it can be totally sold out. If you'd like to check out the artist of the intro music to this podcast, they're on SoundCloud and their name is Palette Tunes. Go give them a listen. Go give them some love. You can find everything you need in the show notes over at soldoutstrategy.com.